Welcome to the first smocking video, and we're going to try to get through this. It's a little harder than I had first expected to try to work with an iPhone in between me and my sewing, my hands, but I figured this is the best way for you to be able to see the up-close stuff. Okay. I have I'm making some kits that you can order. I'll drop a link down there that have a piece of pleated fabric in it so that if you want to just try the smocking before you invest in a whole lot of equipment, you can. It will have 2 pieces of pleated fabric, one made out of imperial broadcloth, which is what I usually use to make like smock dresses or whatever. It has 65% polyester in it, but it does not wrinkle. So it's a whole lot nicer for moms that don't have to iron the dresses. Now it will also have a white piece in it that is made from quilting cotton. And the reason is this is easier to learn on. The pleats are a little bit plumper, so they're easier to get your tension right. But anyway, I wanted you to have one of each one so you can kind of see, what the difference is. Now, when you get your piece, it's going to be pleated all the way to the edge. And I kind of pulled out some threads here accidentally. But the first thing you want to do is pull out the first few pleats of thread. Just come right here to the edge. And just go 3 or 4 deep and just start slipping them out just like this all the way down the side of your piece so that it gives you a flat edge right here. And then you're going to want to pick these up, and you can scooch that down some, and you're going to tie 2 of them together. This just keeps the pleating threads from coming out, because once they come out, it's very hard to get them back in. Okay, and you're going to do that all the way down. In fact, you can do 2 and 2 together if you want to. Now, this side, I've already gotten the first few rows knotted and ready to pleat. So, now you see these threads that are in here. When we pleat, we have whole rows and half rows. And I have pleated this so that you see this blue one up here and then a blue one here. This is one whole row. Then you notice down here, they're a lot closer together. So the pink or the reddish in the middle, those are half rows. All right, and you'll see in a little while how that just helps you guide yourself. Now the first thing we're going to look at is a cable stitch. So all we need is 1 row. Now the very top row is called your holding row. You don't stitch on it. So we're going to come down here to this one. This is where we're going to be stitching. And what we're going to do, this was my practice piece. This top row here, and you can see I left the holding row open. This top row here is a cable stitch. It's an up-down cable stitch all the way across there. And then after you finish a piece, you're going to remove these holding threads. So that won't be showing. But anyway, you're going to have an up-down cable stitch all the way across. And that's the first thing we're going to learn. Okay? Now we need some thread. You can there's a lot of different threads you can use. I use this just DMC 6-stranded thread. We're going to pull out from the long label. And how much? Anywhere from 20 to 36 inches of thread is fine. You don't want to use too much. Use too much thread, because as you're stitching, it does wear on the thread and it makes it dull. So if you use a really long piece, you're not going to be happy with it by the time you get to the end of your piece. Now we need to strip the threads, okay? And what we're going to do is we're going to pull them out one at a time. Now you can smock with 2 strands, 3 strands, 4 strands, or however many you want actually. I'm going to use 3. That's what I usually use for most geometric smocking. Sometimes I use 4, usually for picture smocking. Sometimes 2 if I'm doing a more delicate embroidery. But anyway, so just separate one of the threads and then I hold it. And then I hold the other end down here and I just very carefully slide that thread out. You can see it's kind of bunching up there at the end. But if you just go slowly, then when you get done, you can unroll that and separate out another strand and do it again, okay? And I'm gonna take out 3 strands. I'm going to carefully match up the ends and straighten them out. Some people actually iron their threads and starch them. I do not, but it does make them have a really pretty stitch. Okay, so now I've gotten the thread. I've managed to thread my number 7 darner needle. That's the kind I prefer. The first thing I do is tie a knot down here at the end, and there are a lot of people that will tell you they don't tie knots when they smock or embroidery. Well, I do. And I'll discuss some of the other ways to anchor thread, but you know, for here and now, this knot is going to serve our purposes. Now, the first thing I do when I get my thread knotted is I take it and I pull the thread so that my needle is all the way down at the knot. And I kind of tighten it up because I want to get my threads all smooth. So next I bend it over. Let's see if I can focus that better. Maybe not. I'm just going to pull it through, and you see how I'm flattening out the threads just very slowly, very carefully, watching for the end because I do not want to pull it all the way through the needle, because then I would have to rethread. Okay, there we go. Got it straightened out. Now, let's get started with a cable stitch on this first row. Now remember, my top row is a holding row, so I'm coming down here to this one. And I'm gonna scooch these down a little bit so I can get at my, now this is what I do. The top part is a pleat, down here is a valley. So I come up from the bottom in that valley, like right about where I want to be, just above this row. And then I turn it over so I can see what I'm doing on the back side. This just like helps me find my place. And upside down. Okay. Now, this is where I want to go in. So I'm going to pull the needle back out, and I'm just going to take a little bit of a bite, the top of that pleat right there. And pull my needle through, and then I'm going to make a loop and come back through. This makes sure that knot stays where it should. And then, okay, right under that, let me see. Okay, you're coming through that pleat right there, okay? So that when you come up now on the other side, you're coming up in the valley, okay? My needle is coming up from the valley. And I will pull that up, okay? And then I'm ready to start stitching. So I'm going to go side to side. I'm just taking a bite out of the top of that pleat. You don't want to go past where your thread is, okay? If you can see that, I'm only taking a bite out of the top few threads, okay? Right there. And then let's pull it on through. Okay, now we're ready to move over. This one is coming out the left side of that first pleat. So I'm going to skip over here to the next pleat, and I'm going to make sure my needle is straight with that guide thread. And I'm going to take a little bite out of that one. Okay. Now, if you'll notice, my stitch, my straight part, is going to be underneath my thread. Okay, it's underneath the thread that just came up. That makes it a down cable. The next thing I'm going to do is an up cable, and it's going to be just the opposite. Okay, this was the pleat that I just used, so I'm coming over here to my next pleat. I'm going to make sure that my needle is straight with my guide thread, and I'm going to take a bite out of the top of that pleat. Now, notice that the bar is going to be on top of my needle this time. Now you see my thread is coming out at the bottom. That makes that an up cable because the cable is on top of my thread. Okay, so now let's see if we can do a few more. And we're just going to alternate. I'm going to go to the next open pleat. I'm going to keep my needle straight, take that bite out of the top, and then, oops, I see that I have a thread get caught up in there. That's fine. Like I said, getting started is the most tedious part. Once you get started, it's not hard at all. Okay. And so let's move that over. Get myself a free pleat right here. Okay, this time I'm going to do an up cable. So that means my needle will be going under my stitch. Okay. And there we go. And I'm not pulling tight, I just want to pull snugly. Now, next one is a down cable, so I'm going to take a bite out of that, top part of that pleat, making sure my needle is straight, and then slowly pull. And you see, I'm not cinching up my pleat. You don't want to pull so tight that it makes your pleat cinch like that. If you do that, just stick your needle in there and kind of stretch it back out, just so that it's snug. Okay? Now, that was a down cable because you see my thread is on top. Now I'm ready for my next up cable. We lost some light there. Okay. Taking a bite out of the top of this. Okay. Snugging it up. And then moving over here to the next one. You see, now that we're started and we have a pattern going, it's a lot quicker now. You can just start cabling your way all the way across this row. Okay? So let me know if you have any questions. And that's one of the most basic stitches. It's just up, down, up, down. all the way across the row. So stay tuned. The next stitch that we're going to look at is a wave stitch, a 1-row wave stitch, and I'll be back in just a few minutes with that.